The Palestinian Arab community in the United States and the supporters of the Palestinian cause and the Palestinians' rights organized a protest yesterday in front of the White House against the signing of the deal between the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, and Israel, which aims to normalize relations between these two Arab countries and Israel without pushing Israel to give any of the Palestinians' rights. For more on that topic, I have with me Mr. Warren David from Washington, who participated in that protest, and he is going to tell us more about that. Welcome to our program, Mr. Warren. Welcome.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure with you.
You're welcome. Mr. Warren, yesterday there was the ceremony of signing the deal between the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, and Israel. And that was considered as a blow to all the voices of freedom and justice and support for the Palestinian national legitimate rights. What is your take on that, please?
You know, it seems to keep getting worse when you look at it from the Arab-Palestinian perspective. Of course, you know, we as many Arab Americans, I can't speak for all Arab Americans, but many of us are very disappointed by the Trump administration to normalize relations. It's not a normalization without the Palestinian people. And of course, many of us are very upset. And but at the same time, I think that sometimes a negative can turn into a positive. It's bringing us together as a community, and I think that's one good thing that we can take from the normalization process.
Yeah, and to what extent do you think that such a protest and demonstrations could affect the public opinion in the United States to try to make some change in the political direction of the American administration, whether this administration is ruled by the Republicans or the Democrats, to support the Palestinians' rights and demand for national independence and statehood?
Right. You know, you can see there is a change in this country. As negative as it is, you know, we all look at what's happening with the Trump administration and we just say, oh my God, can it get worse? But there is optimism. There is more and more of a consensus towards the Palestinian issue. You see it on Capitol Hill. You see it in the Democratic Party. It is changing. You know, I can tell you, you know, I've been an activist for over 30 years. And I can remember doing events regarding the Palestinian identity 30 years ago and looking out to the audience and seeing just Palestinians. Now, if we do an event, we look out into the audience and we see many, many non-Palestinians. Not Arab Americans, Americans, and there are more and more organizations that are coming coming our way as far as the Palestinian diaspora in this country.
Yeah, and this leads me to the question, Mr. Warren, that it's great that the Palestinian people living in the United States, the Arabs, and all those who support freedom are coming together. But from your own perspective, how can we mobilize that more in order to have more impact and more influence on the decision makers in the White House? Especially we are talking about organizations supporting the rights of the black, and the black problem is not much different from what we have here in Palestine. How can we bring all these voices together? How we can mobilize that more?
First, we need to come together as an Arab American community. I mean, first there's the Palestinian community, and then there's the Arab American community at large. And we need to come together. The Palestinian community, as you know, has been fragmented over the years. But I think as a result of the recent events by the Trump administration, the Palestinian community is coming together. And that's very important. And then the Arab American community needs to come together. And there are many ways that we can do that. We need to meet. We need to strategize. And unfortunately, that hasn't been the case in the past. The other thing that's very important, and I see that many organizations are building coalitions with non-Arab organizations. And that's also very, very important that we build coalitions. So we need to come together as a community, as a Palestinian community first, as an Arab American community. And we also, it's very important for us to build coalitions. And then lastly, we do need to have more of a presence. Once we come together, we need to have a presence on Capitol Hill as one entity. I remember about 10 years ago, I ran a leading civil rights organization here in the United States for Arab Americans. And one of my first tasks was to go to the White House to meet with some of the advisors of President Obama at that time. And I remember sitting with the advisor, and he told me that, he said, you Arab Americans have so much going for you. You have a high discretionary income. You're very educated. You have great family values. You're a great community. He said, but you're missing one thing. And I said, well, what's that? And he said, well, you're not together. Your Arab community isn't together. He said, we see so many different communities that come to the White House, and everybody has their own agenda. There's not one consensus that you don't come together. So it's really important that we as a community do come together. And at Arab America, which is the platform that we run, one of our biggest objectives is to bring Arab Americans together under one identity.
Yeah, and I think here the last meeting that President Mahmoud Abbas has held with all the Palestinian political parties for the purpose of national unity and for the support of popular resistance against the colonial settler state of Israel has its echo among the Palestinian Arab community in the United States. Do you think I'm right with regard to that or not?
I think that I think if you asked me that question maybe last year, I would have said you're not right. But I think that, as I mentioned earlier, as of the political scenario that has been going on since Jerusalem and on, Golan Heights, I mean, all the different annexation, all of these issues are bringing the Palestinian community closer together. And so, as I said earlier, sometimes negative can become a positive. I think that the positive end of this is that we are, as a community, coming together. I'm not even Palestinian myself. I'm Arab American, but I'm my heart. I believe, that we have to come together.
Yeah, we know that Palestine and Syria are, one country. There is no difference between the Syrian and the Palestinian. We are all brothers. But my final question to you, Mr. Warren, the AIPAC power in the United States, the Zionist lobby and its influence on the decision makers in the American administration, do you think that whether on the long run or the short run, the Arab-Palestinian community can face this lobby and work for the interests of the Palestinian people and the Palestinian cause, or it's impossible? No, I don't think it's AIPAC is losing power in the United States. It's not the AIPAC that it was 10 years ago, and I'm not the only one to read in all the different news publications around the country about the diminishing power of AIPAC. And there is a rising tide, as I mentioned, in the Democratic Party. There are new people that are Congress candidates that are winning elections. The Rashida Tlaibs of the world, Ilhan Omar, but not just Arab Americans, non-Arab Americans on the Hill that are coming forward around the Palestinian issue, which was like unprecedented, unheard of just a few years ago. And that's all attributed, I think, also to the Trump policies that have driven some of the candidates, some of the legislators on the Hill to become even more sensitive to the Palestinian issue. Mr. Warren David, thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much for all these inputs and information. Thank you. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, you can follow up us on our Facebook page, Palestine International Broadcast. From me, Osama Nazal, thank you very much for watching and have a nice time.